Okay, so you know how I've been like in the past, I was like so stoked on like Persistence Academy and like, okay, this is how it's gonna work and like this is the ethos and all that stuff. And then it just fell apart because the people that I was with were like not the right people. And like when you want to, it's almost like it's like a Steve Jobs thing,
Hmm.
right? If no one creates it, you just create it yourself, you know?
Yeah.
And like that's why I feel like I've been going on this long journey of martial arts. You know, like why do you have so many black belts? Why do you keep learning from different teachers? I'm like, because I'm like not finding what I'm looking for.
Hmm.
I'm looking for this like ideal of like benevolence and true warriorship and like generosity, like basically the Bushido code, right?
Hmm.
Like everything that they teach you in like film and like textbooks, right? We don't have that in our society now. And I was recently talking to you about this, and it was just like it keeps coming up. It's commercialization. You know, even
Hmm.
like Faraz Zahabi talked about it, right? He's like, oh, the whole martial arts industry is commercialized now, right? Like karate gets watered down and like because nobody really wants to like fight. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
nobody really is like looking for that truth, right? Whereas I am. And for me, that's like why like we talked about in the last podcast, authenticity. If you're not gonna be authentic with it, what's the point? Like what we LARPing, bro? We're just gonna like put on
Hmm.
these costumes and be like, you know what I'm saying? And that was the thing about the first martial arts studio where I was like, oh, we're just LARPing.
Hmm.
You know, we're like acting like these martial artists, but we have no skill. You know, like sure I can like do this crazy kick, but I'll never land it. You
Right.
know, I might, but like after like years and years of practice. And then that's the thing that got me into jiu-jitsu where it's like, oh, you don't need years and years. You just need the right moves, right? And
Hmm.
like nobody can stop you. But then I realized that like so when jiu-jitsu started, they all fought in challenge matches to prove the art of jiu-jitsu. Okay? So like the creator Helio Gracie, and most people who practice this don't even freaking know this. And that's so frustrating to me because it's like, do your history, bro. Like read your books. You know, they're like because I'll be in like some gyms and then they'll be like, this isn't even jujitsu. I'm like, bro, this is the actual jujitsu. Or you're like slapping each other and like, well, why am I hitting you, bro? It's jujitsu doesn't involve strikes. Every time I hear that, I'm like, all right, obviously you're ignorant. Like
Hmm.
you're ignorant to the martial arts. If you read the book, like that's literally why he started it, right? He like he wanted to prove to his students that it was effective. That's why he fought. He wasn't trying to win prize. Well, his brother was trying to win prize money, but he like Helio Gracie. He was just like, no, this is really gonna work, and that's why he was like weaker. Like his story's pretty sick. So like he was smaller and weaker than everyone else. He couldn't do one pull up, right?
Hmm.
But he created this. He didn't really create it. He like because jujitsu was around there for a while, like Japanese jujitsu, and the person who taught it to him, um, like he was like a prize fighter, and then he was seeking asylum in Brazil. So he taught the guy's older brother as a favor to the father because like, he got asylum and their father was like a
Hmm.
rich person. And then um and then one day his older brother missed class, so then the younger brother who was weaker taught the class, and then the student was like, oh my god, I want to take all my class with you, you're amazing, right? And then like he started to develop a weak man's version of jujitsu, right? Because he couldn't fight big guys. But he's like, no, this will work against big guys,
Hmm.
right? So then he would fight bigger, stronger opponents. And he's like, look, if I can do it, you could do it too. Right? It's all technique. And
Right.
that's what sold me on the idea. But then as you delve into it, it's like so they had a ranch where they all like trained and then people would come and like, you know, but and like they'd like have all these friends, like, you know, it's just like, oh, we're just sharing the camaraderie of martial arts, right? But the problem is they were rich. So it's like, okay, of course you can do martial arts all day if you're rich.
Hmm.
Of course you can offer it for free if you're rich, right? And then this is where the commercialization comes in because it's like, why do you water down everything? Oh, because you need to keep students to keep the place open,
Yeah.
right? And like you were saying this to me where it was like I'd always get disheartened. I'm like, oh man, this isn't really it. And you'd be like, well, yeah, because I'm trying to make money. You know, like you gotta do it or else you're gonna close. What are you gonna
Right.
do? You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So okay. So I think I figured out the solve for this one. All right, we're workshopping. If you're listening to this podcast, like, sorry, we're just putting it down there. It's like top of my mind. So, But it'd be cool. It'd be cool if we like in the future, it's like we can reference this podcast
Right.
and
Yeah.
then it's like, oh, that's where it all started, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, um, okay, so I was driving through Scarborough and it's just, you don't know what little things influence you. Okay. So I was, I was going past these units, right? I was thinking about Joe Rogan, right? Cause they're like, oh, the Joe Rogan podcast, all the people that talk about it, they're like, he works in a warehouse. From the outside, you never know it's Joe Rogan's thing. Right. So I'm like, okay, so you don't need anything that's flashy. That's cool. And then, I'm not going to say who, cause I don't want to give away like the amount, but somebody asked me to like, shout out if you're listening, you know who you are. They asked me to review a contract for them because they own a space,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like, oh, like, what does this mean or whatever, right? And I was like reading it, I'm like, oh, you're only paying like 2 Gs for a space? Like that's not bad. It's bad. It is bad if like, you know, you don't have that much money, but 2 Gs isn't that crazy. You'd think that like, oh, if you own a space, it's gonna be like, you know, 10,000 a month, something like maybe a giant warehouse, right? But 2 Gs. I mean, sure, there's other. I'm just thinking about rate
Sure.
space.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2 Gs not that bad. And then I won't name this person either, but like this person owns a building and they're charging rent on units, right? And I was like, oh, how much are you charging for the space? And they're like $700. And I was like, that's not bad either, right? But I'm like, oh, but like, there's no idea, you know. Like even during COVID, Tara's really pushing me to like open up my own space. I'm like, I'm not ready. Like I don't even know
Mm-hmm.
martial arts. Like I have this hole in my system, which is like jujitsu. I don't know it enough to confidently be like, this is what you don't need to know. This is what you do need to know. Because I really don't think you need to know everything. And that's one of the things. See, here's another thing. So in my past, like learning arnis, right? I got that black belt really quick. And then, but on my thing, it's like black belt for self defense,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I was very specific to my teacher. I was like, I don't care about these weird dances. I don't care about partner movements. Just teach me how to protect myself. And he's like, oh, that's easy. And then I'm
Right.
like, all right, cool. He's like, I'll give you this black belt for self defense,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like I didn't win any like competitions, like because if you look at Arnis, like it's a lot of like dancey movements. I'm like, I've been through that, you know. In my first black belt, it's like you gotta learn all the forms, and you're like, okay, cool, here are the forms. But like I couldn't protect myself, you
Mm-hmm.
know. I had this inflated ego of like, you know, oh, I could totally deal damage, but I'd never hit anyone for real. And then when you watch UFC, you're like, oh, dude, people get hit and they're like not going down,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Anyways, so that teacher, shout out to you, really showed me that it's like you don't need a lot of moves, right? And then I was reading Miyamoto Musashi's book a long time ago, and it said like you don't need many moves to cut a man down. And any school that teaches you thousands of moves is marketing to you. He literally, the best swordsman in the world, said that.
Right.
He's like, yeah, just gotta
Yeah.
kill people with very few moves. Like, what are you gonna do, bro?
Yeah,
The
makes
arm
sense.
swings in
Yeah.
so many ways,
Right.
right? And then we're talking about, you and I were talking about it, like, oh, it's just commercialization of the art, right? Like, there are a lot of moves now that you would use in like, all right, let's take jujitsu now, sport jujitsu. There's a lot of moves out there, but you either gotta like keep honing your craft to like there are some crazy inversions, and I've pulled them off myself, but I'm like, I would never use this in the street. So like,
Mm-hmm.
if you're on the side, it's hard to explain, but if you're on the side, you can wrap your leg around their leg, and then you do a dive roll, and then when you come out of the roll, you're on their back. And I've pulled this off a bunch of times. I'm like, oh, this is gonna work. Oh, it does work, right? But I was like, but it's not practical.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't just
Right.
dive on this. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
concrete, bro. So what I started testing out in jujitsu, like fun fact, people who are listening to this that go train with me, is like I'm testing out things that I'm like, oh, can I just get up? Oh, I can just get up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what are you gonna do if I choke you? Remember I was telling you that? I was just like testing it, like, what are people gonna do if I just choke them?
Right.
So I didn't even do any freaking crazy move. I just put my hand on their neck and was like, choke him. Like, oh, I'm gonna choke you. I did it jokingly though. I was like, I'm gonna choke you. I'm choking you, bro. I'm choking you. And they're like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? I'm like, it's the most basic. Why don't you armbar me? Why don't you kick away? Something like that. But they're thinking sport mentality, right?
Right.
Which is like, this is why I like Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, where it's like self-defense. Like the Gracie combatives that they taught, the army literally came to this. Again, nobody knew this. I was like telling it to one person who like I partnered up with, and they're like, "What? I didn't know this history." I'm like, "What are you doing here, then, bro? Like, there's a reason why I'm at this school, right?" So like the army after UFC, the U.S. Army
Yeah.
went to the Gracies and were like, "Teach our military," right? So they're like, "Well, we can't teach you for like years and years. So like, what do we do?" So they came up with the was like 26 moves or something like that, the most effective 26 moves that you need to know. And after that, like that's it.
Mm-hmm.
That at that point, what they say is like, once you master those 26, it's just jujitsu against jujitsu. You both know what you're doing, so it's like now we're just fighting. Like
Right.
you're fighting a trained fighter. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But like if we're just on the street, I just need 26 moves. You know? And then so then it's funny because like people, I keep going back to the same class, and they're like, "Why are you here?" And I'm like, "Oh, I just want to ingrain it into my like. Why do I need those other moves? Like I'm here to like protect myself."
Yeah.
Actually, one guy he calls me Little Killer. I love that guy. Shout out to you. You know, you're a Russian tank. He's this like ex state champion from Russia, like jacked, bro. Like his head, like my head is like his bicep. I love training with that guy because like he'll give me the real, bro. He'll be like, no, no, Ervil, this is bullshit. Use this move instead. And I'll use it. I'm like, oh, dude, I said his name. um, Shout out you. So like, I'll do it. I'll be like, I'll run up to him after class, and be like, it worked, and he'll be like, I know. And like, he taught me this one move. He's like, if you want to choke a man, you don't need to strangle. You push here and you break his neck. And I was like, oh my god, bro, like, I want to learn this. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what's like. And he's jacked, so like when I roll with him, it's like I know if it's working or not.
Right.
Sometimes he'll get like a little pissed. Like I caught him one time and he got a little mad, and then he just like used his strength. He's like so strong he can bench press me off with one arm. I'm not even like I'm not joking. One time I was like on him on side control. He's like, oh, all right, get ready, Orville. Throws me. I was like, what the hell? So like, well, that's not gonna work. You know what I mean? Like that's who I want to fight again.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I can show other people how to do this, like gold. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's the point of martial arts. Like this guy's like jacked, you know, and I'm so tiny. Anyways, to get back to it. So yeah, you don't need that many moves. People freak out. I even did this one thing where I was like, oh, I'm gonna air stab you. So like I literally pulled out an air knife and stabbed them over and over. I'm like, oh, you're dead now, bro. And then they were like, oh, what do I do? I'm like, all right, switch. And then we switched, and I kept the distance, pushed away. I'm like, this is what the combatives are trying to teach you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they're like, oh, how do you know that? I'm like, why do you think I keep going to the same class, bro?
Right.
You know, like, because that's the point. If it works for the army, it's gonna work for me, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, so there's an ex Navy SEAL dude who, Tim Kennedy. When I saw this video, I was like, yes, you are my inspiration. And there's a bunch of other people like Greg Nelson, stuff like that. They have like firearms training, but I'm like, that's too far for me. Like we don't have guns in Canada, bro. What am I gonna do with that? I mean, like, I'll go to the shooting range, but like, it's not as prevalent.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's like whatever. Whereas there, they need the guns. So this Navy SEAL, what he did is he said, they're like, he literally had the exact same answer as me, where I didn't see this video before, right? I was just thinking about it logically, like, why did I train in Arnis? Because I'm like, well, you need a weapon, bro. Like me against a stronger guy, I'm gonna need a weapon 1st. Like, you get a weapon, game over. Like we don't need to fight, bro. So that's why I'm like, okay, knife versus knife. Okay, okay, now I know how to like defend myself against a knife, right? And so then what happens if I lose the knife? Okay, I gotta be able to like keep you in striking range, keep you off, kick you off, run away, stuff like that, right? Punch you, whatever. Actually, I wouldn't punch because that would hurt your knuckles. And then what happens if I trip and fall, or like you grab me and we go to the ground? That's why I left grappling to my last thing, right? Because I'm like, that's gonna be the longest journey, and that's the one that's like, just in case I can't run away. You know what I mean? Like we accidentally fall, I need some grappling. But I need wrestling to stand back up. It's not just jujitsu. That's why I like the Russian dude. Because like he teaches me wrestling. Like he was our head trainer, he's coming over one time and he was kind of like saying to me, like, I was training with the Russian dude, and he's like, oh, do you know how good this guy is? I'm like, oh no. And he's like, in Russia, like he grew up in Soviet Union Russia, bro. Like
yeah.
Cold War Russia, right? And so back then, And if, fun fact, his dad owned a wrestling gym. So he's been wrestling since he was a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
So like, all right, this is the truth. I'm going to the truth. And then, so like what happened was he was saying that in that area, it's not like to get to like because you're so poor, the only way out is to like make it to the next level. So if you want to be champion, especially state champion, you're getting all the killers to come
Mm-hmm.
because if you win, that's money for you, and we're poor. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
So like him becoming state champion's no joke. It's like you fought killers.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here it's like state champion. Like my cousins are like wrestling champs at their high school. It's like, and I watched the video. I was like, hey, during Christmas, let me show you some moves that the Russian dude showed me. Like you'll just destroy every kid because it's not like a high level of wrestling, but like in Russia, it's like this is your food.
Right,
You know what I
right.
mean? It's like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
will not eat if you don't get good. So he's really, really good. Anyways, so okay, so we've solved the martial arts issue, right? I need truth, okay? But now the commercialization issue. So if you find out that it's like $2,000 or $700, if I can get a cheap warehouse and then run classes from like 6 to like 9 or 7 to 9, then that's not bad. And if you figure out a different way to pay for it, like if you invest your money or like, you know what I'm saying? Like, or if you just put it like, I'm not planning to have kids. So it's like, okay, that money for kids is going to go to this gym. You know what I'm saying? Like that
Mm-hmm.
that will offset the cost. And then that way, what I can do is charge a lower fee because I'm paying like hella mad money right now per month. You know what I mean? And I'm like, this is for rich people, right? And so
Mhm.
okay, the name of the place I was thinking about. I was driving through Scarborough, SOULJA Club.